George, when you were in the Navy, you didn't use any swear words, right?
No, Joe. We cursed all the time. This is why they say cuss like a sailor.
But you use words like cockadoodie and oogie, right?
I'm pretty sure if I swore like that on my ship, someone would have stapled my lips shut.
Well, let's see. Let's read these lines from Full Metal Jacket, but all the dirty words are replaced with the ones similar to the ones Annie uses in this movie.
Okay. Who said that? Who the doodly dang said that? Who's the slimy little fuddy-duddy giggle goose down here who just signed their own tickle ticket? Nobody, huh? The flippin' fairy godmother said it. Well, golly gumdrops, out tootin' standing. I will patootie you all until you snuggle-bug yourselves to sleep. I'll patootie you until your little tushies are churning sweet buttermilk. Was it you, you scruffy little giggle biscuit? Huh?
Sir, I said it, sir.
You little flapdoodle. What have we got here? A ding-dang jokester? Private joker? I admire your gumption. Heck-a-doodle, I like you. You can come over to my house and share a fizzy root beer with my sister. You little snickerdoodle, I've got your name. I've got your caboose. You will not giggle. You will not weep. You will learn by the happy little numbers, and I will teach you with rainbows and sunshine. Now get up. Get on your tootsies. You best unfuzzle yourself or I will twist your head clean off and fill it with giggle juice.
Sir, yes, sir. Maybe we should replace all our dirty words with this. That's actually what's pretty amusing, I must say. Anyway, welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at always and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaka. Today we're discussing Misery from 1990 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us, even the ones who are trying to feel your leg up while they are driving, and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod, just like the patrons that chose this movie out of 3 movies with a kidnapping theme.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Joe, take us back to 1990.
And that's the way it was.
Let's look at a harmless fan's obsession. This is from the Daily Sentinel in Colorado, where the majority of this film is set. Headline, George.
Fan keeping Elvis Stamp issue alive.
I honestly don't remember there being an issue with Elvis getting a stamp, but I guess it was because back in 1990, a woman by the name of Pat Gager spent 7 years campaigning the post office to create an Elvis Presley stamp. She was so into this idea that she became known as the Elvis lady around town. Her argument was that he deserved a commemorative stamp because not only was he a world-famous singer, but she saw him as a goodwill ambassador to the world. Now, the post office did not shoo her away. In fact, the article states that they thought there would someday be an Elvis stamp, but there was the problem, quoted from the article, "There's a very good chance that sometime in the future there will be an Elvis stamp," said Frank Thomas, a Postal Service marketing specialist in Washington, D.C. The major obstacle for a Presley postage stamp is concern over the lifestyle issue, Thomas said. The Postal Service has received mail complaining that honoring a known drug abuser sends a bad message to America's youth, he said. End quote. Remember, this is 1990, when Americans pretended to care about setting examples for the children. Now we elect felons who commit sex abuse to the presidency. So I guess that charade is over. In any case, an Elvis stamp did eventually come out in 1993, 3 years after this piece was written. George, as far as an obsessed fan goes, this isn't too bad.
No, it's not. This is positively wholesome compared to what some obsessed fans will do. But the post office was hitting on something that we really should take on board. Don't have heroes.
Or have heroes who don't put them up on a ridiculous standard.
Right? Don't build statues of people. Don't think that anybody is above reproach because even the best of us did something stupid at some point.
Well, I think if you do something stupid that only hurts you, I'm okay with. I mean, so what? Elvis used drugs. He didn't sell them to anybody. He just used it himself. And all these drugs are prescribed. As far as he knew, he wasn't doing anything illegal because his doctor was giving it to him.
Yeah. I mean, he had more excuse than many.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Moving on, here is a story that is not so wholesome. George, read this headline from the Los Angeles Times.
Fan accused in killing feels guilty. My feelings for her were uncontrollable, says man held in the shooting death of actress Rebecca Schaefer 1 year ago.
This story isn't actually from the LA Times. Rather, they are covering an article in the Oregonian, which ran a telephone interview with this asshole from his jail cell. I won't name him, as I try not to name people who are only famous for murder, but this quote from him is wild. I really feel kind of guilty about all that's happened. My feelings for her were uncontrollable. I was a fan of hers, and I may have carried it too far.
Fuck you.
This man shot this woman to death, and he's saying he may have carried it too far.
May.
What the fuck? By the way, if you're curious, he was eventually convicted and is serving a life sentence. But George, why do you think he would say something like that?
I think he would say something like that because we have a very human tendency to not want us to be the bad guy. So he puts plausible deniability into his own narrative that he may have gone too far, and his emotions were uncontrollable. Here's the thing that boys especially need to be taught that aren't. Your emotions never, ever excuse or justify any action ever. Ever. There is no scenario where you feeling a thing makes you doing a thing necessarily okay.
Especially when doing that thing harms another person.
Yeah.
Okay, George, tell us about Misery.
Okay.
Speaking of harming another person.
Right? This was directed by Rob Reiner.
As an actor, we've seen Mr. Reiner in The Jerk. And as a director, we've seen his work in Stand By Me. On my own, I've seen his work as an actor in The Wolf of Wall Street, Bullets Over Broadway, This is Spinal Tap, and Where's Papa? He was, of course, in All of Them Family, and he was the helicopter pilot in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
As a director, I've seen his work in Albert Brooks' Defending My Life, The American President, and A Few Good Men.
I've seen his work in The Princess Bride. This was written based on the novel by Stephen King.
For the podcast, we've seen Mr. King's work in The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, and The Dead Zone. And we've both seen his work in Dolores Claiborne, both George and I, of course, and I've seen his work in Carrie and The Shining.
Then the screenplay was written by William Goldman.
And I've seen Mr. Goldman's work in Magic, All the President's Men, Marathon Man, The Stepford Wives, that's right, he's the one who wrote it, 1975, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and Harper.
And I've seen his work in The Princess Bride and Maverick. Blurbs. IMDb says, after a famous author is rescued from a car crash by a fan of his novels, he comes to realize that the care he is receiving is only the beginning of a nightmare of captivity and abuse.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Sure, yeah. YouTube. It's a biggin.
It is one big block of a paragraph.
Novelist Paul Sheldon doesn't remember the blizzard that sent his car spinning off the road. He doesn't remember being nursed back from unconsciousness, but he will never forget Annie Wilkes. James Caan and Kathy Bates star in the bone-shattering thriller Misery, adapted from the novel by Stephen King. As Paul, Caan, recuperates from his injuries in the secluded cabin of his benefactor Annie, Bates, he begins to discover that beneath the seemingly kind and naive exterior of his self-described #1 fan lurks a mind that is cunning, unhinged, and bent on keeping her favorite writer as her personal prisoner for the rest of his cock-a-doodie life. And Sheldon must engage his savior-turned-captor in a battle of wills that will push them both to the brink. Adapted by screenwriter William Goldman and directed by Rob Reiner, Misery is considered by critics and fans, #1s and others, to be among the greatest horror thrillers of all time.
That's very interesting. What constitutes a horror thriller? I mean, this is definitely a thriller. When I think of horror, I think of something supernatural, and nothing really supernatural happens except maybe her getting him out of the car like that.
The only problem I have with that blurb is
the length.
No, actually, it's the description of Annie's place as a cabin.
Oh, yeah.
It's a full-on fucking house.
Yeah.
There's nothing cabiny about it.
No, not at all.
That's my minor quibble, despite it being really long and referencing actors and screenwriters.
Yeah, got them all in there.
So, it is winter, just like it is now when we're recording this.
Yep.
And we open in a cabin in Silver Creek, Colorado, where our protagonist, Paul Sheldon, is putting the finishing touches on his newest novel, currently untitled. His writing instrument is a typewriter, but he takes the final page out and writes "The End" in block capital letters, in pencil. I get that impulse, which is why my computer monitor has "The End" scribbled all over it.
Indeed. Paul Sheldon is played by James Caan. Both George and I have seen him in Dick Tracy, and I've seen him in That's My Boy.
The child rape comedy.
The child rape comedy, yes. Dogville. God, there's a series of rapes in that movie, too. I took a date on that. Big mistake. Bottle Rocket, 1941, Freebie and the Bean, and Brian's Song, the TV movie.
And I've seen him in the 2008 Get Smart, and heard him in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. He places the pages in an old satchel and then goes through a ritual that he does whenever he finishes a book. He pours himself a glass of Dom Perignon and has a single cigarette and toasts himself. My ritual for finishing these scripts is usually to go to announce it to Kit, text Joe, and then eat a bowl of Fruity Pebbles. I guess that's the difference between writers and authors, the quality of our rituals.
Sure, that's it.
He loads himself and his manuscript into his 1965 Ford Mustang. He makes a snowball and throws it at a tree, congratulating himself for still having it.
Uh-huh.
We get the film title and credit title cards as he starts driving back to New York City, down a snowy mountain road, backed by Junior Walker and the All-Stars shotgun. He begins in good spirits, which begin to darken as he drives into a snowstorm that becomes a blizzard. He sees his satchel slipping off the seat, steadies it, removing his concentration and one hand from his steering wheel, resulting in his car careening off the road and rolling down the mountain a ways, landing on its roof.
Okay. Now, quick question. Why the hell does he care if that satchel falls off the seat or not?
Good fucking question, Joe.
It's pages. They're not going to be hurt. It's not a baby. Why?
It's pages in a satchel.
In a satchel. It's like, yeah, they're not going to go mixed up. It's fine. Let it fall off the seat.
We flash back to shortly before this trip in New York City, in the office of Paul's literary agent, Marcia Sindel.
Marcia Sindel is played by Lauren Bacall. I've seen her in To Have and Have Not, The Shootist, The Big Sleep, 1946, Dogville also, Harper, and Key Largo.
And I only know her from her being referenced in the song Rainbow High from Evita.
Okay.
So Lauren Bacall me, anything goes.
I don't know that one. But I have to say, yeah, Lauren Bacall is a very famous actress. And can you name the famous actor she is married to? Oh, do you even know this actor? Now that I think about it, you might even know he exists. Okay, I'll just give it to you. And it's Humphrey Bogart.
I know of that actor, yes.
Okay.
Did not know that was the answer, though.
Oh, okay.
I know that he was in Gone with the Wind.
No, he was not.
No, wait, fuck. No, he wasn't. I'm thinking of Clark Gable. Never mind. Okay. I don't know what the fuck he was in.
Boy, Bogart and Clark Gable, two very different people.
I believe it. Just like Angelica Houston and whoever I fucking thought she was.
No, you just thought Angelica Houston was black. You didn't mix her up with anyone else. You just
I think I was actually mixing her up with Whitney Houston. Because at least they have the same last name.
Yes, that's your excuse. Go ahead.
They discuss his best-selling romance series titled Misery after its protagonist, Misery Chastain. In the latest book, Misery dies. He's glad to be rid of her, even though that series bought him 2 houses, his car, put braces on his daughter's teeth, whose college it's paying for. He's excited to try his hand at something different that he can be proud of.
Now, quick little background. I don't know if this is the same thing with Stephen King, but Sherlock, oh God, who was the author of Sherlock Holmes?
Sir Ian Fleming. Nope, that's James Bond. Fuck! Why am I mixing everybody up?
Any case, the author of Sherlock Holmes...
Oh, hold on a second. This is a perfectly Googleable fucking question. Arthur Conan Doyle.
The author of Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle, hated Sherlock Holmes, and he eventually killed that character off. People don't seem to realize that because, of course, he wrote the next book, bringing him back once everyone got very upset, and his other books didn't sell, I suppose. So that may have been the same with Misery. Even if he hadn't been kidnapped, maybe he would have just brought the character back to life somehow.
Yep. Back in the present, in the car, Paul is still clutching his satchel, trying to maintain consciousness. Somebody crowbars open his door, pulls him out, and begins a bout of crappy CPR. Like, I have on the desk in front of me right now the National Safety Council First Aid and CPR workbook.
Yep, you showed it to me on the camera, folks.
From my training like 2 weeks ago. Now, CPR has changed since the 1990s, but even by 1990s standards, it was crappy CPR. This works because movie, and the stranger throws him on their back and carries him away.
Now, if there is one really unbelievable part of this movie, it's that Kathy Bates is not that big. She's not throwing James Caan over her shoulder and just carrying him away, especially in that weather. You and I wouldn't be able to do this. There's a blizzard out there, the snow hitting you in the face. You're carrying this heavy man. He's not helping you in any way. His body's completely motionless. This isn't happening.
According to IMDb trivia, Misery was almost turned into a Broadway play with Julia Roberts as Annie Wilkes. Stephen King vetoed the idea because Annie is, in his words, a brawny woman who can sling a guy around, not a pixie.
Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think Kathy Bates is particularly brawny. She's just heavy set. That's not the same thing.
Nobody is saying that there's much nuance here, Joe.
And isn't he taller? I mean, you can't really tell because you've seen it most of the time, but I'm pretty sure Caan is taller than her. The idea she just throwed him over shoulder it was ludicrous.
Anyway, after 2 days, Paul begins to regain consciousness. He sees a hanging IV bag and hears that stranger's voice.
I'm your #1 fan. There is nothing to worry about.
You're gonna be just fine. I'll take good care of you.
I mean, I know that clip sounds kind of like what I do to my voice to make myself sound like dead John Hughes.
Don't give away the secrets of the podcast.
Oops. Anyway, she introduces herself as Annie Wilkes, who also happens to be a nurse.
Convenient. Well, anyway, Annie Wilkes is played by Kathy Bates. And George and I have both seen her in Dolores Claiborne and The Office. And I've seen her work in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Midnight in Paris, and A Civil Action.
Was God there?
God, in fact, was not there.
Ah, go figure. I've seen her in Titanic and The Waterboy.
Mm-hmm.
2 very different movies.
2 very different movies, yes. Well, she's very versatile.
Yep. Annie has Paul take 2 Novril, which, according to pharmacytext.net, are fictional painkillers with side effect described thusly. Sedative effect makes it hard to escape from deranged fans holding you captive.
That's awfully specific.
Yep. The website recommends non-drowsy extra-strength ibuprofen as a safer alternative.
Indeed.
He zonks out. He wakes up later as Annie is changing his IV and wiping his brow. He asks why he's not at a hospital. She says the phones are down and the roads are blocked from the blizzard. And he zonks out again. There's a lot of him zonking out again.
Yep.
And according to IMDb trivia, James Caan had to stay in bed for 15 weeks of shooting.
Wow.
Caan said that Rob Reiner was playing a sadistic joke on him, knowing that the actor would not enjoy not moving around for so long. Caan was not used to playing a reactionary character and found it much tougher to play.
Caan was not used to playing a reactionary character in front of him. How is he a reactionary?
He not reactionary as in the political alignment.
Oh, you mean
as
move
in
around, sort of.
Yeah, he can only react to what the other person is doing. Yeah.
All right. Well, you say reaction, like that immediately go to political. Like, what? How is he a reactionary?
Right?
Anyway, I'm sorry. All right.
Thanks, politics, for modern politics, for fucking poisoning the well with words that could mean other things. He wakes again and gets more filled in on the extent of his injuries. Compound fractures in both legs. Sure, he'll be able to walk again, and she'll get him to a hospital as soon as the roads open. But
In the meantime, you've got a lot of recovering to do. And I consider it an honor that you'll do it in my home.
more Norville, and he's out again. And I'm just going to say it here. Kathy Bates, fan-fucking-tastic in this movie. Holy shit.
You're giving away the ending very quickly here.
No, I can just be all the way through the movie. She is fantastic. In Silver Creek, the town chief of police, sheriff, president of the Policemen's Benefit Association, chairman of the Patrolmen's Retirement Fund, and not the worst fishing guide, Buster, takes a call from Marcia, who is looking for her wayward client.
Buster is played by Richard Farnsworth. For the podcast, we've seen him briefly in Blazing Saddles, and I've seen him in The Outlaw Josie Wales, and I saw him in the movie Mighty Joe Young, the 1949 version.
And I've seen him, and I'm surprised you haven't seen him, in The Ten Commandments from 1956.
You know, they ran it a lot on TV, and I just found it boring to watch. so I never sat through the whole thing.
I would watch that movie any fucking time it was on, specifically for Ann Baxter.
Okay, what did she do? I don't remember.
She was Nefertiti.
She did what with her titties?
Yes, Joe. She played Nefertiti.
Okay. And she was hot?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay. That's why you enjoy it.
Not only has Marcia not heard from him, but neither has his daughter, and the owner of the cabin he was at said that he checked out last Tuesday. Buster assures Marcia that she may be a bit overprotective, but she's not crazy, and says he'll look into it. He says, I'll put it into our system, which is he writes it on a yellow Post-it note and sticks it on a bulletin board behind him. I thought that was cute. Buster's wife and occasional deputy, Virginia, comes in, bearing coffee and breakfast.
Virginia is played by Frances Sternhagen, and I've seen her in The Hospital, and she played Cliff Clavin's mom on Cheers.
And I saw her in The Mist.
Is that a horror movie?
Yeah, and I thought that there were more than one The Mists, but there weren't. Back at Annie's, she's shaving Paul's face for him. She wonders why such a genius would drive headlong into a snowstorm. He says he didn't know there was a snowstorm coming.
Which, okay, this is again, I'll call bullshit. He seems like the type of person who at least check the weather, and if he didn't, you think the guy who's checking out going, oh, you sure you want to leave now? Because a snowstorm is coming. Someone would have informed him.
In fact, the owner of that property would have a business reason to know that and to warn him because, hey, I might be able to squeeze another night or two out of this guy.
Exactly, yeah.
Annie says that she's read all his books and even knows them by heart. She asks if she can read his new manuscript, and he gives the okay, and even asks her help with coming up with the title.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is his first mistake.
Yep. Buster interviews the cabin owner and learns that there was nothing at all unusual about Paul's departure. We are 17 minutes into the movie, and this is where Annie starts showing that she is what, according to IMDb trivia, one forensic psychologist described as a virtual catalog of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
She's feeding him soup and loses her temper over the profanity that she had read in Paul's manuscript. She spills the soup on the bed and yells, "Look what you made me do," like all sane people do when they make mistakes. I'd play a sound clip, but it's just the fucking cold open.
Well, not really, but okay.
Virginia is driving Buster down the road leading from the cabin. She's bored and caresses Buster's leg.
Virginia, when you're in this car, you're not my wife, you're my deputy.
Well, his deputy'd rather be home under the covers with the sheriff.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little horny thing.
Yeah. You get it, Virginia. He tells her to stop the truck, where he sees that a tree is broken in a rather unnatural way. When he investigates further, he becomes stuck in the snow and gives up just before he'd have reached the overturned car, which was uncovered on the downhill side. So close, yet so far.
Mm-hmm.
Back at Annie's, she's returned from town with conflicting reports of what phones work and what roads are open. None of that matters because she's got the newest Misery novel and she can't wait to read it.
Yep.
So she makes Paul breakfast and is nothing but happy so far with the novel at page 75. Later, she introduces Paul to her pig named Misery. Also, she's on page 300, and, using a slur for Italians, she compares the novel to the Sistine Chapel as divine.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, those dirty words she has no problem with.
Right? Later, she stares out the window and describes dealing with her husband leaving by getting lost in the Misery books. Now, she's right at the end of the book and just has to know what happens. And then late at night, she bursts into his room, screaming that he had no right to kill off Misery. She breaks a table over his head.
I thought you were good, Paul. But you're not good. You're just another lying old dirty birdie. And I don't think I better be around you for a while.
And then she walks to the door.
Don't even think about anybody coming for you. Not the doctors, not your agent, not your family. Because I never called them. Nobody knows you're here. And you better hope nothing happens to me. Because if I die, you die.
That's a lovely thought.
Yep. Gatsby is fucking fantastic, Joe. Like, she had a lot of words to say in this movie. So she had a lot of time to be acting, and she fucking did it well. She gets in her truck and drives off. Desperate, finally realizing how truly fucked he is, Paul painfully falls out of the bed and inches his way to the door, only to find it locked.
He should have guessed that.
Yeah. The next day, Buster fields a call from Marcia saying they're doing everything they can to find him. Virginia digs and finds that there were no credit card charges after Paul left the cabin. At Annie's, she's somewhat calmer now and helps him get back into bed. She says God gave him to her so that she could help him write a new novel and save misery.
That's how God works, all right.
Yep. To do so, he has to focus on that. Can't be distracted by other stories, so she makes him burn his manuscript. Paul watches helplessly as a helicopter searching for him flies on by. He decides to stop taking the Norville and begins hiding them under his mattress.
The whole burning of the manuscript thing, which the character, I completely believe she would have him do something like that. And I'm surprised you don't have the clip of her saying what she's saying when the embers are flying through the air, and she's saying whatever dumb word she said. Oh, golly, gooly. Oh, gooly, golly.
No, I think people should watch the movie so they can see that for themselves.
They can still enjoy it here and watch the movie. Hopefully people have already watched the movie and just enjoy us talking about it anyway. But the thing is, okay, and I've seen this in other movies and it drives me crazy every single time. A writer has only one copy of his book. No writer in the modern era only has one copy of the book and no one else has seen. He has to send the book over to his editor. He has to send it to his agent. He just doesn't write a book of, I'm done, and I'm the only one who gets to see it. That's ridiculous.
But
they've done that before.
This
over and over.
story actually addresses that specifically, that he does that on purpose.
Because it's superstitious. I still don't buy it.
Okay.
I don't believe it. I think that's absurd. Because again, where's his editor? His editor
in New York, probably.
His editor never sees a copy of this thing? Come on.
Well, he hadn't gotten it there yet.
Because he got the one copy.
I mean, he only got the one copy because he wrote it on a typewriter, and it's been it was 5 minutes between when he wrote it and when he wrecked his car.
It's 1990. Faxes exist.
Nobody knew how to use a fax machine ever. Even when they were all the rage, nobody knew how to use them.
Yeah. I'm sure a publisher had no... Yeah, you're one of our best sellers. Sure, I don't want to see what you got working on. Just go ahead. Give us any old goddamn thing. Sure.
So Annie puts him in a wheelchair. She gifts him with an electric razor and a typewriter and paper. She wants him to write a new misery novel where the titular character isn't, dead. He notices a bobby pin sitting on the floor and asks Annie to go get him better non-smudgy paper. After another unhinged rant, she slams a book on his legs and then goes to get that paper. With her gone, and still in extra pain, he grabs that bobby pin and fashions it into a lockpick. He escapes his room into the rest of the house. He finds the front door locked from the outside, and an old rotary phone with the guts torn out. While exploring, he knocks over a penguin statuette and then puts it back slightly off from where it started. That'll come back later. He finds her storage closet with the Norville and pockets some. He sees a back door in the kitchen, but the wheelchair can't get through the door, to the kitchen, so he painfully gets to the floor and crawls to the back door. And, surprise, that's locked too. He sees a butcher's block with knives. Before he can grab one, Annie comes back. He hurriedly gets back into his wheelchair and parks himself at the typewriter, drenched in sweat. She wipes him down and gets him back into bed with a writing pad, just in case he gets inspired. By this point, the snow has melted some, and a helicopter spots the wreckage of Paul's car. Investigation shows that someone pried him out of it.
Well, only Buster figures that out. For some reason, the state police don't.
Yeah.
In fact, that whole scene with the state police was ludicrous. Because the guy straight up says, oh, he's dead. And they don't do that. They say, we're still looking for him. And they notify the family that the guy may be dead. It's announce it on TV.
Yep. Paul uses a piece of that paper that he was given to fashion an envelope and empties some of the saved Norville capsules into it. Later, he's writing, and Annie is critical of his work. They have a conversation about old cliffhanger picture shows. And that's going to be our end clip.
Okay.
More later, she's happy with his work, exuberant even. What with Misery being alive again, she's so happy that she puts on her Liberace records.
Because who doesn't?
Because who doesn't? Buster picks up all of the Misery books. He figures, well, maybe he could glean something about the case if he's more familiar with Paul's work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, quick aside about Liberace. I can't remember the actress's name, but there was an actress. I remember she told a story how she had a crush on Liberace when she was a little girl and would write to him asking him to marry her. Which is either adorable or really sad, depending on how you look at it. Because, boy, was she barking up the wrong tree. Anyway, he was a grown man anyway, so nothing could have happened to begin with. But really the wrong guy.
Yep. Paul asks Annie to have dinner with him, and she's delighted. He finds an opportunity to slip the sleeve Norville into her wine, but she spills it. Then it's a writing and Liberace montage.
Yep.
With Paul also using the typewriter for strength training. One day, it's raining, and Annie comes in, flatly says, "Here's your pills," and tries to leave. Paul asks what's wrong, and she says the rain makes her sad. She often thinks of suicide, and has a gun. She might put bullets in it. She gets into her truck and drives off. Paul uses this as an opportunity to swipe that knife from the butcher's block.
Mm-hmm.
At Buster's house, he's reading Misery's trial. He remarks on one particularly, to him at least, interesting line.
There is a justice higher than that of man. I will be judged by him.
K.
Mm-hmm.
On his way back to his room, Paul sees Annie's scrapbook titled Memory Lane, detailing her tragic, possibly patricidal upbringing with her sadistic and murderous career as a maternity nurse.
Which, of course, you would keep a book like that around in your house. Call it Memory Lane. Mm-hmm. Like good old memories of how it was on trial for murder.
Yep.
Of children, for God's sake. Because who wouldn't want to be reminded of that?
Right? Paul gets settled back into bed, stashes the knife under his mattress, and waits. And waits. And waits. Eventually, he falls asleep. He wakes up to Annie standing over him, and she quickly injects him with a sedative. When he wakes once more, he's bound to the bed. Annie knows he's been out of his room. That penguin always faces due south. And she found the knife under his mattress and found his lockpick in his pants. Ooh.
Mm.
Then she goes on a tangent about the Kimberley diamond mines and how the owners would prevent their forced labor natives from running away, a process called hobbling. She puts a piece of 4x4 lumber between his legs and then smashes his legs against it with a sledgehammer.
That is a brutal scene.
Yeah, that was flashing me back to audition.
Yes. Our podcast is a thing about men being injured by their feet.
Yeah, we have a reverse foot fetish. Sometime later, Annie goes into town and gets into an argument with another driver. Buster sees this and then goes to the library. He remembers where he saw that quote before. Annie Wilkes said it to reporters as she was being hauled off to prison.
Mm-hmm.
He also confirms that Annie buys all of Paul's books at the general store. Then he goes to pay her a visit. As he approaches, Annie stuffs Paul in the basement and then drugs him again. She invites Buster in, but he can't find anything wrong. As he's leaving, Paul wakes up and knocks over a grill in the basement. Buster re-enters the house and sees him at the bottom of the stairs. Annie comes up behind Buster and blows a hole in his chest with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Was that unexpected for you?
Yep.
I
didn't see that
coming. This movie before?
Nope.
Yeah, okay.
Nope, never saw it before. I laughed.
Because you're so shocked.
Yeah. Annie figures the jig is up, so she proposes a murder-suicide. Paul convinces her to let him finish the book first. He swipes a can of lighter fluid from the basement.
Okay. During that whole scene, and they have quite a conversation there.
Uh-huh.
So am I to believe the sheriff's body's just lying there this whole time? Yep. At one point, does she sort of walk down? Like, is she stepping on his body? I mean, what? I didn't understand. I was like, is this a continuity mistake? It's like he's not there. No one's reacting to the fact there's a corpse right there on the stairs, on top of the stairs.
Yep. Good question, Joe. Whatever the question was.
Whatever the question was, yes.
Once he finishes the book, he asks for his ritual items. When Annie goes to get them, he douses the new manuscript with lighter fluid. When she comes back, he tells her all the things in it that she'll never know, and then lights it on fire. I learned how to do this from you. Great line.
It's like the marijuana ad.
Yep.
or the anti-marijuana ad when the father finds weed in his kid's room and he brings it. Who taught you this stuff? I learned it from you, Dad. I learned it from you.
Yep. A struggle ensues, and ultimately Paul survives and Annie doesn't. This went over 2,000 words, and I was tired of writing by then.
Okay.
18 months later, Paul is meeting with Marcia. She says the critics are raving about his new book and asks if he'd be willing to write a nonfiction book about his experience with Annie. He says no, but he also says that despite it being a complete horror movie, it made him a better writer. Okay. He hallucinates a waitress looking like Annie, who says that she's his #1 fan. The end.
The end. It seems silly for me to even ask because I already know your answer because you gave it away already. But George, what did you think? Does it still work?
For the record, me thinking somebody did a fantastic job acting doesn't necessarily mean I think the movie worked.
But
it did. It was a solid horror story and like thriller, and even though it's not my favorite genre, like I would have pegged it as a comedy. it was dark in ways that were hilarious to me. And I don't know if that's what it meant to do, but it did that. And for that, I say it works.
What I like most about this movie, and I guess the reason I'm a little, although obviously a horror is happening to someone, I always think horror is more of a fantastical thing, like Frankenstein and those sort of stuff. In the modern era, that tends to be a lot more bloody. And this isn't. This is not. There's not a huge body count. There isn't a lot of blood.
No, this is psychological horror.
Yeah, this is probably close to a psychological part. In fact, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. Which I guess I enjoy more because I agree. It still works. It's a very solid movie. It's hard to see how it could ever really be dated other than the nonsense about I have this one copy. That's stupid. But beyond that, it's a very solid movie. The performances are all great. Khan does a great job. No question. And Ms. Bates does. Yeah, I loved it. It's a really good movie. I saw it in the theaters and I enjoyed it then, and I saw it again for the podcast and I enjoyed it again. Glad I was forced to re-see it.
And I wasn't expecting to enjoy it, but I did. Thank you, patrons.
All right, so let's move on then. This was a Patron's Choice episode, and the poll for next month's film is already up on Patreon. The choices are The Goodbye Girl from 1977, The Bodyguard from 1992, and In the Mood for Love from 2000.
What's the theme here,
What is
Joe?
the theme? I was asking if you can figure out the theme.
Oh, isn't it romance?
Yep.
That right.
And if you want to vote, but are not a patron, you can fix that by becoming one at patreon.com/DTSWpod. Now, George, what's up next?
Next week starts our Black History Month series, and we will be talking about 12 Years a Slave from 2012.
So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romeka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's nobody around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
Paul, what you've written just isn't fair.
Not fair.
That's right. When I was growing up in Bakersfield, my favorite thing in all the world was to go to the movies on Saturday afternoons for the chapter plays.
Cliffhangers.
I know that, Mr. Man. They also call them serials. I'm not stupid, you know. Anyway, my favorite was Rocket Man. And once it was a no-brakes chapter. And the bad guys stuck him in a car on a mountain road and knocked him out and welded the door shut and tore out the brakes and started him to his death. And he woke up and tried to steer and tried to get out, but the car went off a cliff before he could escape. And it crashed and burned, and I was so upset and excited. And the next week, you better believe I was first in line. And they always start with the end of the last week. And there was Rocket Man trying to get out. And here comes the cliff. And just before the car went off the cliff, he jumped free, and all the kids cheered. But I didn't cheer. I stood right up and started shouting, "This isn't what happened last week! Have you all got amnesia? They just cheated us! This isn't fair! He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car!"
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
Let me, why the fuck? Why do I have to I can't just fucking, you know what I can do? I can fucking screenshot. Fuck you for not letting me right click and just save as, you fucking pricks.
What are you trying to save?
This is,
Oh.
I mean, bangs, Joe. I've always had a thing for bangs.
All right.
From the No Stupid Questions subreddit. Why are male chicks killed rather than raised and used for meat as they mature? In the stupid questions category, which may not be a stupid question, why are most women's gymnastic coaches men? So, random question. If you were the god of a lost religion, what would you be the god of? From no stupid questions. What is it with guys and getting overly affectionate with each other when they're drunk? Stupid question. Are there any edible liquids with 0% water content? Last question from random questions. What was the inner dialogue like before language was invented?